welcome back to Redefine Parenting. I am your host, Vinu Keller. I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her networks on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both Zingo TV app on the respective app stores and on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, I have an amazing guest. And the reason why I am so excited about her is because this topic has been coming up in my household quite a bit between my husband and I. Not only that, I have the honor of coaching a lot of parents and kids, and parents start to ask me, when should we start talking to our kids about sex? And I always say, there's lots of books on it because I never wanted to take responsibility of saying, when we should, when we shouldn't. And I have never formally met Amy, but I have been a part of her newsletter and her network. And I see the content that Amy produces and what Amy has to say. And it really makes a lot of sense. And not only that, it goes along the line of what I tell parents to be curious and not critical. The stuff that Amy produces that I have seen thus far has a lot of stuff that's really about curiosity and about how to explain things in our kids' way, in a way that their brains at their age will understand it. So without further ado, I just wanted to welcome you, Amy Lang, to the show, Redefine Parenting.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So, I'll just start off. So I have 10-year-old twins. I have raised two other children. They're 28 and 24. And I remember when my 28-year-old was probably about 11 or 12, I got a book for him that all talks about how his body changes. So that was all great because it talked about how his body is going to start changing, how it's going to start developing. He's going to get hair in places he never thought hair should be. And, and then when his brother got to that age, I was giving him the book and he's like, yeah, Mom, I already know. I'm like, oh, okay. But I don't know if I ever recall sitting them down and talking about sex. It was almost like I assumed they knew when they became teenagers. So what I would love to know, and the burning question is, when is the right time to talk to our kids about where babies actually come from? And I love because you're birds and the bees. And I was like, great. When do we have that conversation?
So there are a lot of myths about when to have that conversation. So I'm just going to talk about them and tell you a little bit why they're wrong. And then we'll talk about the actual ideal time. So
Love it.
people think that the time to talk is about 10, 11, 12, when sex ed often happens in schools. They think that when your kid asks the question, they're ready. What do you do if you have a kid like mine who told me and his father that he would never ask us a question about sex? It's a really great moment as a sex educator. And so those are a couple of the myths. Some people think you should do it right when sex is on the table, so when they're in high school. Some folks think that it is just, like you said, they'll figure it out. They'll be fine. They'll figure it out. So all of that is wrong, frankly, because what you're doing is you're basically letting your kids steer the ship, right? In terms of when they have this conversation, when they get this information. Not always, but a whole lot of that is it's out of your hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some way, you're letting the world dictate, well, a bunch of myths dictate how to have the conversations. So this may come as a surprise. And so, maybe take a breath. The ideal time to get the reproduction piece out of the way is when they're 5. Yeah. So breathe.
Okay.
Like I said.
Yeah,
Okay.
I need to take that in. 5 years old. So when you say that, are you taking into consideration like the brain development of 5-year-olds? Like,
yes, totally. So let me explain why 5. Okay.
yes.
And that is not the first sex talk. Okay. We're just talking about getting the baby making piece out of the way. So the reason it's 5, if you think about 5-year-olds, what are they like? They're open, they're curious,
Yep.
they are going to kindergarten where they're going to be hanging out with a whole lot of people who have all kinds of information that they might not have. They are so their world's expanding. They don't come into the conversation with all the stuff we do. So when you say the usual way a baby is made is penis, vagina, sperm, egg, blah blah blah, they take that information in as the same way as if you said this is how butter is made. It's just science to them. They
because
don't
they're,
know, right?
I'm sorry, they're so innocent still. They have no idea that there's any type of connotation to it. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not yuck. It's not good. Like nothing.
Nothing. And so you had this terrific opportunity. Think about them as an empty vessel. So you can fill them up with fact and evidence-based information. You talk about your values. And so that sets them up to A, be informed, B, they see you as the source for this information. So you establish that. Frankly, it's easier on you to talk to a 5-year-old than it is to talk to a 15-year-old. You've had 15-year-olds, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
They come to expect this from you. They may not like it, but we don't care. There's a whole lot of parenting in life that our kids don't like.
Right.
It's our job to make them comfortable, right?
Right.
It's our job to keep them healthy and safe. And discomfort is part of it. Is part of life. And so when you're talking about baby making, it's not just the usual way. But it always takes a sperm and an egg. Right. So if your family, if they came to be, if you have a 2-mom family, a 2-dad family, you're missing out on a little something. Right. So talking openly about sperm donation, ovary, surrogates, all that stuff for every child needs to know that, because it is a fact of the world. And, and it's fun. It's interesting. Right. Like we're the ones that are like, oh my God, because, we've had sex and we know the good, the bad, the ugly, right? We have a personal experience. We had terrible sex education, right?
Did.
Right?
Definitely.
Not good examples. So I think my big message here is that you need to think about this in a logical way. It does not hurt a child to know about even pleasure. Like you should tell your kids most of the time when people have sex or make love, they do it because it feels good to their grown-up bodies. Do you hear my language?
Grown up. Yeah.
We want to establish that sex should feel good, right? Because that's the main point of it. It's not baby making. Like all the sexual things we do are about pleasure. And I know it's hard to think about your kid and pleasure and talking about that. But imagine if the primary message you got growing up was like, hey, this is something that should feel good to your body. That's a really joyful, wonderful part of life. Sure, things can go sideways. You do need to be safe. Talking with you openly about consent and healthy relationships and birth control. If that, everybody needs to go know about birth control, no matter their sexual orientation. Talking openly about that, how much better you would have done, right? I know I would have done better. I made choices.
Yeah, I think we all did. So let's talk about some of the fears, because I'm just going to be, like I said, a real raw conversation. So like some of the fears that comes up for me. Well, first of all, I'm going to call my mom after this and said, Mom, you did good, because she taught me when I was like 6 with the Joy of Sex book, and because I had an older brother, and I guess she just thought it was time to teach him, so she was going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Bring on the little 6-year-old and the 9, 10-year-old, right? And here we are, and I was like, looking at these pictures of a male body, and I was like, oh, wow. Like I was kind of, mortified at the time. I guess is the word I would use now to describe what I was thinking back then. And I remember going to my best friend, Tiffany, and I was like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, oh my gosh, my mom showed me these pictures, and we just started laughing and giggling about it. Like, did you know? And so now as a mother, that brings into fear for me. Because I was talking to my husband about this literally like 2 nights ago. And I said to him, because there was a commercial on TV, and I was like, oh, change the channel, because my stepdaughters that are almost 18 and 15, I was like, okay, we got to turn this off. Why? Because my twins don't know this. And you know what? They probably do. And I think that they don't.
Maybe.
And the fear that showed up for me was, if I tell them my daughter's like me, she's going to want to go tell everybody, like, guess what? My mom said this and that. And then I'm afraid it'll go to school, and then I'm going to get a call from the school principal going, okay, So your daughter came to school and was telling everybody about this and that and that. And I guess because I had no scientific knowledge, I had no expert like you teaching me. So I felt no certainty or validation to back me up of why I thought, except for the fact that it's my child. I feel it's my responsibility as their parents to make the choice of when I want to talk to my daughter, to inform her and because I was a boy girl twin,
Yeah.
about their bodies and what's going to happen and how babies come from. So my daughter can stop thinking that we poop babies out.
Oh yeah, I would like that. Um,
Yeah.
so just to be clear, your mom showing you the joy of sex at 6, I would never, ever, ever recommend that. That is, it is illustrations, they're lovely, of people engaging in full-on sex acts. So I would not do that. I'm glad you survived it. Of course, you told your friend because you're like, Lordy,
No,
right?
she
What
didn't show me
is
the whole book. She showed me just a few things, like
this? Okay, good. I'm
yeah, yeah,
glad
yeah,
to hear
yeah.
that.
My mom's very Indian, so she was just like single mom trying to figure it out as a
Oh, yeah.
parent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, no, no worries. So just want to say, just
yeah.
everybody,
Don't show the
no,
book. Amy
no,
say,
no,
do not
there
show
are
any
other
book
books.
like that.
There are other books. There are other books. So your fears. So your fears are really common. And okay, let me also back up the truck here. So first of all, do not stop TV shows, ads, because you think your kids are too young to see them. And the reason for that is you are putting up a barrier. They're like, why is she being weird? What's happening here? You're not mature enough to see that. Well, I would just go Google whatever the hell you were
Right.
watching. The 15 and the 18-year-old are rolling their eyes, no doubt. So that's the first thing. And when that happens, just be quiet, be calm. And then if you need to talk about it later. You can bring it up and say, hey, there was an ad for, I don't know what it was, Viagra. It was probably worse, or different. I shouldn't say worse, more challenging. So whatever it was, you can then talk about it later. So that's one thing. Being afraid they're going to be the town crier.
I
Who
can't control
cares?
it. Right. I can't control
Who
it.
cares? Right? I mean, this is your child's health and safety. These are your family values. This is your choice to make sure they're getting the information from you. Most of the time, kids don't spread the good news. And if they do, it's with a friend
Mm-hmm.
or they're correcting another friend. So if somebody says, hey, this is a thing, and your friend and your kiddo already knows what the real thing is,
Right.
then they may say, yeah, not so much, and correct them. There's
Okay.
nothing wrong with that. And then if you have a parent or the principal that comes and says, hey, your kiddo is telling everyone all the things, then you can say, oh, super sorry. We're really open in our family. We want our children to hear it from us first. So we'll remind them that this is a private conversation we have in our family. It's not their job to tell other kids. It's their parent or caregiver's job.
Right.
And then you do this, right? I mean, at least your kid's going to be accurate. So there's
Right.
that.
Right. And I mean, that is the truth. And so I think that's the issue that a lot of us parents have, is that we do want it to come from us first. And
Right.
yet we're scared for it to come from us first at
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
time, right? There's a little dilemma there.
Yeah, there's a dilemma. There is a dilemma because we didn't have examples of how to do this and how to do it
Right.
well. And we're all, this, you're a parenting coach. We don't know what we're doing,
Correct.
right? We don't know what we're doing anyway.
And
So it's fine to say, honestly, with your 10-year-olds, and what I recommend for folks whose kids are 9 and older, 8, 9 and older, is that you actually apologize and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. We should have started talking about this sooner. It's really important you understand this part of life. It is very cool. It's complicated. And I want you to be prepared. Right? This is about preparing them for this part of life. We used to focus on prevention, and that, yeah, of course, bad things can happen and there are ways to be safe, but we want them to be prepared.
right.
Right? And this is one of the biggest things we do. I'm sorry, trigonometry, I don't actually know what that is. That doesn't do
Mhm.
anything for us.
But we know
Like,
sex.
but sex, it
Yeah. And you
does.
know what? And it's so important. And, there's so much controversy now of like what's being taught at what age and whatnot, about the different types of sexual encounters from different partners and whatnot. And I'm not going to make the show about that, because this is
Right.
really about
Yeah.
helping parents with the right type of language to use, when to use it. But I do want to say this, is that when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, I remember in fifth grade was the first time we're going to have sex ed. And all of us, because we were like 10, we're all giddy. We're like, oh my gosh. And to be honest, most of us already knew what it was. I
Mhm.
mean, me a little bit earlier than people, but me and my best friend knew, I should say that.
Yeah.
And then I remember it was all, and then we were separated and we just learned about the girl's body. We just learned about the uterus and the ovaries. We didn't hear anything about sex. Like in our mind, we thought sex was what two people do together. We didn't know sex was like our female sex, our male sex, And it was so interesting. And then I remember going into sixth grade, and sixth grade, we had joint sex ed.
Mhm.
And we were
Mhm.
like, oh gosh, here comes the big talk. No, we went back over the bodies again in front of each other
Yeah.
and about the girl's period and all this. And I was like, okay, so when is the talk going to happen? You know? And then when I fast forward, when I went to college, I actually took a class on human sexuality
Mhm. Mhm.
because I really didn't have anybody to tell me the ins and outs, right? My mom spent 5 minutes showing me like 3 or 4 pictures, explaining it, and then we were done. And we never talked about it again.
Mhm.
And I also knew that in our culture in India, we don't talk about it. We don't touch. We don't do anything until you get married and you have an arranged marriage. Like, so it was like something that we didn't even talk about. So, of course, being raised in America, first generation, I wanted to know more. And I wanted to know more, not from the chatter that people say, but like really what it was. So, and my major was psychology anyway. So I'm like, what a great class to take towards
Yes.
my
Yes.
degree, human sexuality. And I learned a whole lot. I learned a lot about STDs, a lot about, different things. Back in our day, AIDS came out in the 80s. That was really, well,
Mhm.
probably before that, but it got big in the 80s.
Mhm.
And so we thought gay was wrong because you're going to get the gay disease, as they called it,
Mhm.
just AIDS,
Mhm.
and other people could get it now too, and all this. And so everything was refrain. Like forget birth control,
Mhm.
just refrain.
Mhm.
That's the only
Mhm.
way you're not going to get this. And we were scared, we were scared to have sex. So one of the things that you mentioned is don't be open and be honest that when you're an adult, this is something adults do because it feels good. It's nothing to be scared of, because we grew up in an era where we were scared of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't
Lots of
it.
folks were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear there. So just one thing, I don't say that sex is for adults because it's not true. Average
It's
age people, everybody's done something sexual by about 19. Average age of penis and vagina sex is 17. So when you say it's for wait till you're an adult, that's an unrealistic expectation because not very many people do. Um, so what I say is for when you're older, I say it's, when we're talking about reproduction and sex for pleasure, I say that your heart, mind, and your body are not ready for something like this. And we'll be talking a lot about it. So you're really prepared, when you have your first partner, your first boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're thinking about doing something sexual, make sure that you know like what a healthy relationship looks like and that you feel really ready, right? And, we don't get to decide when our kids have sex. They decide. So you get to decide, like you said, how well informed are they, right? Do they understand that consent means that everybody says yes to whatever's happening, right? Do they
right.
understand they have the right to say no if they don't want to do something and that they should listen to their partner if their partner says they don't want to do something? And we didn't get that message, right? I think we're probably about the same age. Yeah, HIV was and AIDS was scary, but it was the gay disease, and we didn't. It was stuck right there. I mean, I was worried about getting knocked up and getting other STIs. So yeah, that needs to be part of the conversation. But if the FIPER focuses on fear and the lunatic idea that abstinence sex education actually works, it does not. It has never worked. It never will work.
It creates more
So
curiosity, and I think that kids are going to do it more. Like I believe that and one of the things that you said is that when it comes from you, especially at an early age, it also sets up, and my listeners know this about me, it's always about how do we create that open, safe, and trusting space to communicate with our kids. It starts now. Like it starts, apparently Amy's saying 5, so I'm going to go with Amy because she's the expert.
yeah,
But just think about that. If we were able to have that conversation with our 5-year-olds, we are showing them that, look, I'm going to give you the information that you want to know in life, like the important stuff, because let's face it, when I was 15, 16 and sex was on the mind, especially when, you like boys and boys like girls, blah, blah, blah. how great would it be to know that you had a parent that's like, okay, well, my parent already talked to me about this, so I'm going to go talk to them about it. Like,
Right.
you said when I'm ready, mom. You said when I'm older. So I'm 15, I'm older. I really like my boyfriend. We've been dating for this long, and I feel like my body's, ready. When I'm with him and we're hugging and we're kissing, I feel like I want to do that. That's the kind of conversation I want to have with my daughter. That's the kind of
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
want her to feel open that she can come talk to me about that,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
because we can't tell them when they're ready. I
Right.
remember when
You
my older son came to me and said, him and his girlfriend, I was at a friend's house on Halloween. He was 15 and he
can't. Of
says, we're ready for sex. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm so sorry. What? Like now at my friend's house, like,
Not.
have this conversation now. And
Yeah.
I said, so I don't condone it. I
Yeah.
think that you guys are too young. I appreciate you coming to me to make sure that you guys have protection, because that's what it was about. I
Yep.
said, he needs to talk to her father, because, and he needs to know. And my son's like, I'm not having this conversation with you and your dad. I'll have it with my mom, but I'm not having it with you and your dad. I said, that
Yeah.
might be a good choice, son. Good choice. And, but I said, I was happy that they were taking precaution. I was happy
Mhm.
that they were
Mhm.
coming to say, okay, we're ready. We want to have protection and all that. And I said, I don't condone it though. I don't feel, and I'll tell you why. And this comes up with the fears. You know, Birth control is not 100%. At 15, is my son ready to be a parent?
Mhm.
Am I ready to be a parent again? You know,
Mm.
and are you ready to be with this person the rest of your life? Whether you're together or not, you're going to be a part of this person's life the rest of your life. Like, there's so many adult decisions, and the frontal lobe is not developed. So they don't have the reasoning. Like you said, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And it's up to us as parents to be that frontal lobe, to look at long-term effects of what can happen by your actions. And then there's STDs that are some that don't go away ever, you
Yeah,
know?
so I'm just gonna interrupt, because a couple things. So first of all, go you. They picked you,
They did.
right? And even though you were not a fan of them getting busy, like, or at that age, the reality is no matter what you said, they could go behind your back and do it, or
Right.
they, right? You can say, I don't like, I really think you're too young. Here's why. Here's some things to think about. And yes, we'll get you birth control.
Exactly. It's exactly what it
And
is.
so, just one thing about birth control is that it is way different now than it has ever been. There is birth control that is 99% effective. IUD and implants, there are 8 million different kinds of pills. And so yeah, they could get pregnant, right? Of course, if there's penis and vagina sex happening. But we need to be informed too about, what's going on out there. And again, focusing on don't get pregnant, don't get an STI is not motivating. Talking about, hey, how, like, hey, okay, are you really ready for this? Are you being pressured? What does this mean to you? Like, those questions that you asked are really important. And again, I'm just going to go back to the starting early, because you can have those conversations along the way. And so they know, like, hey, I really believe you should wait until you're in a loving, committed relationship, until you've been with your partner for, you say whatever, and they're going to do whatever,
They
right?
are.
Right?
They're going to do
Like
what they want to do.
6 months, right? And if pregnancy can happen, please let me know. You want to them to understand like that from an early age. And then if you're open about it when it's time, like you did something real great there where they came to you. I mean, I did high five, high five. So just that's why you start sooner rather than later. And it's so much easier to talk to a 5-year-old than it is to a 15-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah. And, developmentally, what they need to know. So I said this, like, get the reproduction thing out of the way by 5, but your very first conversation, your very first sex talks is using the correct names for private body parts.
Yes.
They need to know penis, vulva. They need to know what's down there. And when you teach them correct names for their private body parts, if there's someone in your world, it's always somebody, always 94% of the time, the person that will prey on a child or groom a child or molest a child is known to the family. And so if you're having a family dinner and you're full of your 4-year-old, announces to God and everyone, Mama, my vulva itches. That person is going to go, okay, I'm not targeting that kid. They're talking with their parent.
Right.
Same with
Oh,
having
nice.
sex talks. Same with having sex talks. It's protective. Kids who are well informed are protected. And so when they're little, you talk about bodies and boundaries and different kinds of families. And then by the time they get to be about 8, everybody needs to know about puberty. Their bodies are going to start to change. And, especially people who can bleed, they need to know,
Right.
right? I know that some of you didn't know. And suddenly, like I had a gal tell me one time, she had no idea. And her period started, and she's like, well, what's happening here? And then she thought, well, I had spaghetti for dinner last night. So somehow the spaghetti is coming out of me.
Oh,
We
goodness
don't
gracious.
want that.
No, no,
No,
we
no,
don't.
no. Or I'm bleeding to death, or there's something wrong with my body, right? So everybody needs to know about everybody else's puberty. I love your puberty. That was not sex ed. That was puberty ed times 2, right? Look, you should learn about each other's bodies. Okay, right. That's not what we needed.
No, we wanted to get to the like the down and dirty. Like, tell us what happens.
Want the good stuff, right? And then folks are weird. Some folks have trouble having their kids take part in the sex ed that's in their school system. So ideally, they're in a school system. I'm in Seattle, Washington. In Washington State, we have comprehensive sexuality education. And what that means is it starts in kindergarten. They are not teaching kindergarteners about BDSM. Okay. There's a lot of myth out there about what they're teaching. They're teaching about bodies, boundaries, consent. They don't get to like big stuff until they're in high school. And you are always going to be the most powerful person in this conversation. And so let them have the sex ed at school. You can talk about what they're learning. If you can engage in conversation, it's good for them. Even if it's abstinence only education, it is great fun to talk about how that is all backwards and wrong. And again, I'm just going to say this again, that does not work. Every state in the United States that has that kind of sex ed, all mostly southern states, they have the highest teen pregnancy, HIV, and STI rates. So it does not work. Anyway.
So I have a question, because I want correct information. So I keep calling it STD because that's what I was trained. And you say
Yeah.
STI. So has it changed? Am I wrong? Like, I want my
Yeah.
listeners to be educated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is
So STD is sexually transmitted disease. A disease is like cancer, right? So the connotation is that it is big, not going to go away. So we don't use that anymore. We say infection because most of the time it is an infection. Chlamydia is an infection. Herpes is a lifetime companion. It's more of a disease, but part of that is to take away the stigma around it. So we say STI. We don't say lose your virginity. We say first time sex because virginity has so many horrible shame, right?
and
Connotations, right?
and lose your virginity is like you're losing something. And to be honest, when it's your first time and it's beautiful and you can make it that way, like that's, how I want to explain it to my daughter, in
Yeah.
a private
Yeah.
way, is that, it could be the most beautiful thing that happens to you. And it's like, you're not losing anything. You're gaining
Yeah.
something,
Yes.
And so I love that. I love that we're taking away that you're losing your virginity. And
Just don't say that.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that but all of this came from, though, back in our days of growing up, is our families were so scared, number 1, of reputation. If you're,
Mhm.
like, the girl that's going around, what names are gonna be called, and,
Mhm.
like, not my daughter, not my daughter,
Mhm.
and pregnancy, and then
Mhm.
STIs. Like, those are, I think, were,
Mhm.
like, the 3 things
Mhm.
back when we were
Yep.
growing up,
Yep.
why it was like refrain, 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 and then, again, well, STI would be the AIDS as well. So, I mean, I can't stress this more, and my listeners know this because I'm always talking about like the different generations. Like we are
Mhm.
not raising Generation X kids anymore. Like we're grown up.
Mhm.
The Generation X kids are now raising
Yep.
the millennials, the Gen X, the Gen Zs, and now the Alpha kids. We have got to change with the times. We have got to realize that we are smarter at 5 than we were back in Gen X. Like every generation gets smarter because there's more development, there's more
Mhm.
going on in our world, and if
Mhm.
think we're going to raise them the way we're raised, we're going to miss out.
Yep. 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 We're going to miss out. It's totally different now. And we can't, and because of the rate that information comes to our kids, and it's information that lots of us don't want our kids to have until they're, early 30s, we have to get ahead of it. And the only way to get ahead of it is to take care of that part of
Awareness.
parenting. And I have a new book. It's called Sex Talks with Tweens, What to Say and How to Say It. And the thing that people always ask me is exactly that. What do I say? Give me the words. So the whole thing is scripts.
Do you have a book on how to talk to kids from 5, like elementary age?
I have another book called Birds and Bees and Your Kids, which is about how to talk, kind of how to get you ready to talk, get yourself ready. And there is absolutely information in there about how to talk to younger kids.
Okay,
The nice thing about
that's a key thing because again, most of us are Gen X kids that are having that are
yeah,
we need to have the talk now. Like that's what Amy's saying, everybody. You got a kid and you're
on
a
it.
Gen X, we need to have the talk now. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing it tonight, just so y'all know. I'm doing it tonight.
Well, I'm
Don't
going to
nobody
give you some tips. Don't go crazy town, my friend. Do not go crazy town. Let me give you some tips before you're like, hello, it's time. Because they are not going to like that at all. At all. Yeah. So Birds and Bees and Your Kids is kind of a primer. And then Sex Talks with Tweens has tips about how to talk to your kids for sure. But the majority of it is you just open it up and how do you talk about oral sex? There's a script.
and I
How you talk.
generally don't do this, but where could they find it? Because this is so important to me,
Yeah.
obviously. Where can my listeners find these books?
Yeah, so they're on Amazon, of course.
Amazon.
So yeah, and other places, but that's where we all are.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
here,
where
let me help you out here because you are officially allowed to start the conversations, but you're not allowed to be me doing what I am to y'all right now. Um, so, and goes for everybody. So kids who are 8 and under, you can just say, hey, you know what? We're old enough now to start talking about this. There's some great books and you're already reading books with your kids. So just throw in a copy of It's Not the Stork or It's So Amazing. And they, and read it. Read it yourself first. They're not going to do anything. They're going to be like, oh, wow, that's weird. And you're like, yeah, it does seem weird. You're a kid, right? They're sex positive, which is another thing. Sex positive means what we've just been talking about. Sexuality is a wonderful, good, joyful part of life. Sex positive does not mean that you're all for, all kinds of crazy sexual stuff. Part of being sex positive is saying you do you, right? You do
right.
you. So I just want to clarify that. And then with kiddos who are like your kiddos' age, I would apologize. And I would say, you know what? I'm really sorry. We should have started talking about this sooner. I didn't know if you were ready. I didn't think I was ready, but I'm ready and you got to know. And then I'm going to get you some books and then you're done. That's all you're going to do tonight. Okay?
Yay.
All you're going to do because you're setting the stage. You have a little work to do. And then get them books. Everybody needs a book about puberty by the time they're 8, like I said. And actually the best place to get books from me is birdsandbeesandkids.com. I have a bookstore there. It's all in one place. So
Okay,
you can go shopping. And so you get that out of the way and then get books for them. And then you've kicked the door open. And so you can say, hey, little miss who thinks, did you say that they poop out babies? Was that you?
Yeah.
You can say, yeah, I just need to clarify here.
Right.
And then you're using like, It's So Amazing is great. And you're like, see, there's the vagina. That's where the baby comes out. The poop comes out the anus. That is not a baby
Yeah.
area. And, yeah, honestly. Yeah. So, and then by the time they're in 6th grade, they should know the basics of everything. And mind you, I'm saying the basics, right? You are not the Kama Sutra or the Joy of Sex for your kids. They don't need you to teach you. You don't get to teach them how to have sex. Whew, I know, who wants that, right?
I don't.
And that means they know about the good, the bad, the ugly. They understand consent. You're talking openly about that. You're talking about crushes and healthy relationships. You do need to talk about sexual assault and rape and abuse. You have to talk about that. You aren't starting with that. Just saying.
Well, no, and you know what? I think though that like that's where we did feel comfortable. Like I speak for my husband and I. We have taught our twins the correct terminology of their parts. We explained why we call them private, why they need to be covered. We talked about good touch, bad touch.
Excellent.
We talked about, if it's uncomfortable, you say no. And if someone proceeds to touch you uncomfortably and you don't like it, you tell us. And because let's be honest, kids have a higher sexual feeling down there because it's heightened, like when they're babies. That's what I was told in this human sexuality class. Maybe I'm wrong, but back in the 90s, that's what I was taught.
Yeah.
And they said that that's like a lot of abuse. Like kids they're confused because it feels good, but it's not right. You said it was wrong. And, so it's just tell your kids if it's not a good touch, like they got to
Yeah.
understand good touch, bad touch. And
And
that
yeah, they
really,
do need to understand that. And it's great that you've been talking about with your kiddos about that because it is really fundamental to their safety. So just a couple tweaks. Safe touch, unsafe touch, because good has a connotation.
right, it
And
does.
yeah. And when you touch our clitoris and penis, they are wired up for fun, for pleasure. So if someone is touching them there and it's inappropriate, it does feel good. And the person is usually telling them it's not okay to tell, and they'll get in trouble and all kinds of nasty stuff. But if they know that it's not okay or safe for someone to touch their privates, and especially an adult or an older kid, that every adult and older kid knows that, and that it's not okay or safe for them to touch or look at somebody else's privates, and you hear how calm I am. Like you're all calm about it. And then you say, you know what? You can tell me, you won't be in trouble. We'll make sure that you're okay. And we'll get that other person help.
Right.
They usually know, love, and trust that person. They don't want them to get in trouble. And let them know. Sometimes people will tell you that you'll get in big trouble if you tell, and you say, that is not true. Not with us. That's
Mm-mm.
not a thing. We got
Right.
you. We got you. Again, really good books. C is for Consent. I Can Play It Safe. There's lots of Consent for Kids, which is a great book for kids who are 9 and up. Love it, love it, love it. So these, it's not like, it's not just the penis and the vagina, right? It's not just puberty. It's a big part of life, right?
It
It
is.
is something that we do our entire lives. Again, back to trig. You don't need it. You don't need it. Yeah, yay, academics. But at the end of the day, they're not going to get you where you need to go in terms of the things that we do all the time. Be in relationship, be in our bodies, be in romantic relationships, be in sexual relationships, have an experience of our sexuality. We do that our entire lives. So my belief is that fine, your kid gets A's, whatever. But if they're not getting A's in this, they're kind of, I swear a lot, they're kind of screwed, frankly, right? And it's our job. And it doesn't have to be super hard. It can be fun and funny.
And one of
And
the things that I tell parents is like, remember to look at what is in your control and what's not. What is
yeah,
in our control is teaching our kids about their body and what their bodies can do and what's great about it, what's not great about it. That's our control. What we
yeah.
can't control is the choice that they make to go have sex.
Mm-hmm.
So my philosophy is that if I do everything in my power to teach them right from wrong, from safe to not safe, and they still make that choice, then they're aware, because it's all
Yeah,
awareness. And then I am not going to be, oh my gosh, they did this, they did that. Well, I can only feel that way if I didn't give them full warning.
right,
you know
right.
we teach our kids right from wrong. My adult kids have made choices, they've been in trouble, and it's like, okay, so how can I support you now, and what did you learn from it, and hopefully this won't happen again.
Yeah,
Same thing,
yep.
because whether we like it or not, our kids, I hate to say it, get ready for it, they're going to have sex.
They
Yeah,
are.
they are.
They
They're going to have
are.
it. And so I've always been, obviously, by telling you my story of my older boys,
Yeah,
I've always been a fan of having the conversation and being open. And I'm very grateful that my son came and told me. And it's still not easy to know when the right time is, because I didn't even choose the right time, as you so kindly told me.
yeah,
Like, that was not the right time. Okay, yeah, and I can do better now. And that's why I
yeah.
tell everybody, I said, my twins were my do-over to get
Yeah.
it right, like to have
I
a second
wish.
chance.
Come on. They're all gonna end up in therapy, right? There's nothing perfect. And yeah, this also leads to bigger, broader conversations. So if
Right.
you're safe to talk to about this, then if one of their kids is using drugs and they're afraid or anything's going on, they will see that they can talk to you. So it isn't this is broader. And then the other thing that I love about being an open and askable parent who's providing lots of sexuality education to their kid is that you will be a resource for their friends. They'll know that's happening. So if they have a friend who's in a difficult situation of any kind, they're going to be really likely to come to you and you'll be trustworthy, you'll be able to guide that child, help that child talk with their parents if it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not. And depending on their family structure or whatever. So it's a real place of privilege when
Right.
when another child confides in you. And I'm guessing you probably had other kids confide in you.
I have. And so that's my next question for our listeners is that, so say your child goes and starts talking to Johnny about it, and then Johnny's coming over for a sleepover, and they're like, Miss Amy, you just, me and your son were talking. He was like talking about this, and my mom hasn't talked about it. Can you tell me, what do you say? What do you do?
So if another kiddo is asking you directly, like a young kid is asking you directly about stuff, then what you need to say is, oh my gosh, it's so normal to be curious about that. Well, actually, what I would say first is like, oh, tell me what you know, because you want to gauge a little. And then
Right.
I'd say, it's super normal to be curious about this. And you know what? Honestly, it's not my job to talk to you. It's your job to talk to your mom or your dad or who's ever, in charge of you. You know what? How about I let them know that you're curious and you all can get that conversation started. So then you go to the family and you say, hey, heads up.
Yeah.
We're really open in our family, and we told our kiddo that it's not his job to talk to other kids, but he just spilled the beans. So
You might want to tell.
here, yeah, gotta let you know that this is what they told me. So I have these great books and resources for you if you want some help with this, but you really need to get going because he's going to get misinformation. And you can just say again, and then you say, and again, I'll remind our kiddo that it's not their job.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well,
And then this, and then this, right?
cross your fingers and pray. I think it's funny because I think a lot of us parents, and I don't know, you probably get this question more than ever when people say, well, when's the right time? And I think one of the fears is that, like, it's kind of like Santa Claus. Like, when do we start to tell our kids, this and that, and the Easter Bunny and all these other things? And some people, they're upset that your kid told their kid, and it's like, well, sorry. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And so, like, if they're upset about Santa Claus, are they, what? This is a bigger topic than Santa Claus.
Right. Well, Santa Claus is not about health and safety. Santa Claus is about fun.
Right.
Right. And there's this myth that somehow there's going to be this loss of innocence if a child learns about sexuality and learns about their bodies and sex and all that. This is about health and safety. This is not about, the innocence is not lost when it comes from you. I mean, yeah, your child might be like, oh my God, that's so gross, the older they are. And little kids, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know there's anything bad or shameful. They're not coming to the conversation with all the crapola we come to the conversation with, right? And the good stuff too, right? And the good stuff too.
Right.
So if you're worried about your child losing innocence from you talking to them, don't. They're going to lose innocence if they don't know, right? If they don't know, like being porn exposed, which everybody will see porn by the time they're 18. I don't care how careful you are. Other families are not careful. They're going to see it. Seeing pornography, that is loss of innocence.
Yeah.
Learning about rape or sexual abuse, there's loss of innocence there, right? That stuff is hard.
And I
And
can't tell you how, like, I've had a couple of clients come to me over the years saying, like, devastated, like, what do I do? My child was 6 years old. He was watching his iPad. He was switching YouTube, and then he clicked on something, and he saw, a man and a woman, and why was his private in her mouth? Like, this kid, it was traumatic.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
traumatic. And,
yeah.
and he didn't go to both of these kids that I know, they didn't go to their mom or dad. They were talking about it. The other kid was talking about it. And then the teacher heard.
Yep.
So don't wait for you to get the call from the teacher. If you're taking Amy's advice, number one, get the books so we can all have the right conversation with our kids for the development of their brain. And they will come talk to you then. They will say,
More likely.
"Don't be so traumatic."
More likely.
More likely, yes. I mean, there's a chance that they won't, but I'm just saying, like, if we start to, you have a better chance they're going to than not if you've already started to talk about this conversation. They'll be like, well, I remember you saying this, but you didn't mention that. Can we talk about that? Yes,
Yeah.
we can talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, for sure. And so I need to push on the porn thing a little bit. I know our time is kind of winding down. So your kids will see porn. You have to talk with them about it. There's a book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, again, on my website, there's junior and I call it senior, that talks about what pornography is, how it can impact the brain, what to do if they see it. Now, they are going to see it. And so if they know what sex is before they see it, and you've said, hey, this is sex, it's not for kids. It can be really scary and confusing for kids to see this. You need to let me know if you do. You won't be in trouble, right? We'll make sure you're okay. If you need some help, we'll make sure you get help. So they have to know about it. And when they know about sex, it contextualizes it. And they're like, okay, that's adult stuff. I shouldn't be looking at it. And they're more likely to turn off the app, and they're more likely to tell you. But if you are not using a monitoring and filtering, you need to, because they will see it exactly like you explained. It's accidental most of the time. So monitoring is watching where they're going. You can see everywhere they go, and filtering is blocking terms. There's a product that I really like is Bark. It works really well. It's easy to install. Think about the monitoring and filtering like the monitoring is a seatbelt. You'd never let your kid in the car without a seatbelt, ever, ever, ever. You should not let your kid go online without monitoring. It's the seatbelt of the internet. And then the filtering is like a car seat, right? Right? Super tight when they're a newborn, and then they eventually end up in the front seat, right? So by the time they're in 7th, 8th grade, you can take all the filtering off, but you're always watching, because you need to make sure they're making good decisions.
Right.
And then it's an opportunity for conversation. And if you don't believe me, then pretend you're 10 and search sex.
Right.
And you can't unsee things. You cannot unsee things. I do it once a year, and I'm always like, ugh, gross.
My husband always says, you can't bleach your eyes. I wish I could bleach my eyes. You can't. And I want to say this. There was a program. So we're really lucky at the school that my kids go to. It's a private school. And Protect Your Eyes is another place that came, and they talked to us. They did a whole webinar with us families. And so we got like a subscription to the basic whatever. But they also recommended the Gab phone, which that's what I got for my kids, because
absolutely.
My twins have the Gab phone. And also they said watch the show Child 2.0 or
I can't help you.
And Childhood 2.0, and it's on YouTube, and it's also on Prime, and I watched it. And the reason why I bring this up is because you're talking about porn. They're addicted to it in middle school. They're addicted to it. Their body, they see it, their body reacts. They enjoy the pleasure, and now it becomes something that they're all doing. They'll bring their friends in. And so that is why Amy, this is why I brought you on, because we have to have this real world conversation. We have to get this out to all of our listeners, to all of the world, that it is not a bad thing.
Right.
And I love that we're taking off the good and the bad, and we're putting safe and not safe.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the porn because, honestly, to all you that are listening, this is all about awareness. Be aware. If you're aware, then you don't know what you don't know. You can't protect what you don't know. You can't be in control of what you don't know. So give your kids the education that they need in order to have control over their body, their thoughts, their actions. And this is one way we can do it. I always say, be curious, not critical. And that's exactly what this is. Be curious about it. Don't have an opinion. Take the filters off of what you think about it, and give your kids the gift of awareness, the education. Amy, I generally, because it's a TV show, I can't really put the links in, but it will be on my YouTube. I'm put the link to your website, because I think these books are so important.
Yeah.
And it seems like you have a whole plethora of like the way you go around and teaching it. So we only have like 2 more minutes. So what would you like to say to the listeners, like, just to kind of close us out?
Yeah. So my website is birdsandbeesandkids.com, and there's a ton of resources there. So I just want to say that. And then what I'd like to say to you is I like to give tiny homework. And so what I recommend is that you spend some time thinking about what are your hopes for your kids? What are your hopes for your kids when it comes to their relationships? And when you focus on that, it gives you roots. It makes it easier to have the conversations, and you'll feel more comfortable and confident. And then the other thing is that no one's going to die and no one's going to throw up. So do it. It's
Yeah.
important. They need
Yes.
you.
They do. And I can't thank you enough for being here, being an advocate for this. We think about parenting coaching, we think about like our kids with anxiety and depression, and we think about like their education and are they getting the right grades? Why aren't they succeeding in school? I think the one thing that we don't think about, because it's sometimes scary to think about, is when do we introduce sex to our kids? When is it time? Because this is something that's going to follow them throughout their lifetime.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Amy said, it starts younger and younger, it seems, and it goes on forever. So give your kids the gift and the knowledge of knowing about their body, knowing about the function of it, knowing that it's not a bad thing, it's not a dirty thing, it's actually very beautiful. And form your own values around that conversation, and definitely get these books. Amy, again, it's been a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you so much for your time. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.